Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spettin, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we're going to cover a lot of ground this week as we look at bounce back candidates in the minor leagues later on in the week. But first, we're going to open up our mailbag and take questions from listeners about all things Orioles. And as usual, a pretty broad range of topics are going to be discussed in this mailbag episode. We'll look at not only the state of the Orioles at the major league level, but get into some minor league stories as well. And I'm just going to jump right in with this first question from Ben Durst. How are you all feeling? Playoff hope brought back to life at all? Still selling at the deadline? This, of course, coming on the heels of pretty good run for the Orioles, having won 7 of 9 against the White Sox, Mariners, and A's, though they are coming off a series loss against the A's. So, Nick, I will start with you here. How are you feeling right now?
Still not paying much attention, to be honest. I kind of over the anger and disappointment, and back to regularly watching the minors more so, having fun again, talking about the minors and prospects, the draft, doing all my research. That's all become fun again. But it's still a tough watch to watch the major league team, in my opinion. I think my eyes are shot. My eyes are like bleeding from all the college baseball I've been watching the last couple of weeks, which has been fun. Luckily, that's been really good to keep me entertained. But as far as the major league team goes, I'm just not watching a lot right now. But luckily, we have the minors here to keep us entertained and talk about. But my eyes are on 2026. I think here once the college season wraps up, I not a huge hockey fan, but I do get very invested in hockey playoffs. That's wrapping up here in the next couple of days. Once we enter this dead period of summer where it's like baseball is king, I'll get back into watching the Orioles because watching the Jackson Holiday breakout, watching Kowser cement himself, Cade Povich hopefully kind of really cement himself, Kobe Mayo following along. Looks like Kobe Mayo is maybe starting to show some signs of life there in the big leagues. So there's a lot of fun young storylines to like follow and pay attention to in hopes of a quick 2026 breakout. But yeah, my eyes are still fully focused on 2026 and hopefully like the trade deadline coming up. Like hopefully this is an aggressive deadline where we have a lot of emergency shows and a lot of fun podcasts during that time. But also like it's aggressive in that same thing. It's eyes on 2026 and not 2027, 2028. This is eyes towards an immediate, this was a crap year. We'll get over this. Look forward to next year and hopefully be right there in contention very quickly again.
Yeah, I was inspired after Saturday's come from behind victory that I stayed up till 1:30 in the morning to watch against the Sacramento Athletics to write a article about the trade deadline, which I'm going to post tomorrow morning. It would have been nice. It would have been more fitting if they would have come out and won Sunday's game as well, but had to make some minor adjustments after they lost the series to the A's ultimately. But yeah, I just think it's going to be very interesting if the team continues to play well and win games now, which whether I'm still basically to answer the question, I'm still selling at the deadline no matter what, pretty much, unless it's like we win 75% of our games over the next 44 games. But it's just nice to be able to watch the team be competitive and comebacks are back on the menu. Like the energy is back. The level of play is there again. Finally, pitching's been better, but it's just, it'll be very interesting at the trade deadline because if they do just say 60+% of the games over the next 7 weeks or so, then it gets incredibly tough because we know the front office is in the same mindset as us, where it's like the season's pretty much over. We can gear up for 2026 already, but there could be some pressure from the fans if they can feel it, and maybe from ownership if they're like, we can do this. To me, it's like, I don't want to shut this window at all when for a slim shot at a playoff chase when it would still take a miracle after the trade deadline. I'm more about just extending this window, gearing up for 2026. But like Nick said, yeah, the anger is gone. They're playing well. we're not losing ridiculous games night in and night out. Even if they were, I don't think I'd be at the same level it was in the first 2 months where it was just completely unexpected. So yeah, I'm just content with the season. I'm here for the Kobe Mayo acclamation, for him to break out at some point. It's coming. I think his swing and strike percentage has gradually gone down. We saw the same thing with Jackson Holiday. Shout out to Tommy Carr in the Discord for pointing this out, that he looks much more comfortable at the plate. I think that's coming. Samuel Basayo looks like he could come up and hit 25 home runs the rest of the way in the majors if they wanted to do that. And yeah, I'm just excited for the minors, the prospects, and in the development of the young guys at the majors.
I'm cautiously optimistic that they're at least past the worst that they're going to play this year, that it's only up from here. After that, just wait and see is kind of the approach I'm taking. Would I love for them to get back into this? Yes, they're also 12 games under 500, and they've got a long way to go. And anytime that I see someone do the math on what it would take for them to get back into it, it's like, this is so daunting. And it's not impossible, but
it's never happened.
It's never happened. Exactly.
Yeah, it's really hard. That's where it's like, we won 6 in a row. We won 7 of 8. I'm starting to feel like, okay, yeah, we're getting healthy. We could do this. We're still 12 games under, and you lose one game and it's like, oh, back to whatever. It's killer. Yeah, it's hard. 18 games under is a long way, no matter how much time is left in the schedule.
Yeah, that's the kicker is when you do see somebody say, all right, here's where you need to go just to get to this point, not even playoff contention, but just to this point. And it's like, that's hilarious. That's not going to happen. But like I said, there's still a lot of fun storylines. I think if you're just if you're still optimistic and thinking this team goes to the playoffs, like, more power to you. Go for it. Believe somebody's got to, but I'm just not there. And it is taken a lot for me, I think personally, just to see this team collapse as hard as it did instantly, and then just to see, the negative, not even just the negative comments from fans, but the real dirty, disgusting, vile comments and stuff on a daily basis. It made posting not fun. It made coming up here just not fun to talk about this team. But yeah, it's done. It's in the past. Feel better. There's still a reason to be optimistic. And the biggest thing is just being happy that this team is winning some games. And yeah, if you're going to beat bad teams, take advantage of that. Good. Steal some wins from some of these better teams. You got, I guess we can even move into the next question here and kind of zone in here. This is from Ben H. He says the Orioles won 7 of 9 against the White Sox, Mariners, and A's. Orioles have 20 games left in June. They're 12 games under 500. What will their record be in those 20 games? I'm not expecting much out of that. It's Tigers, a lot of games against the Rays. You got the Yankees. I'm not expecting a whole lot, but steal some fun games. Like Bob was talking about, some fun ones here and there. Steal some fun games from the Rays and the Yankees. Take one of these, beat the Angels, win the Angels series. That would be nice. Take some from the Rays, take some from the Yankees. Surprise everybody. Take the series from Detroit. That would be a lot of fun as well. But I don't expect a winning record. But just have some good moments the rest of this month and go into the All-Star break even healthier. Westbrook's coming back. Mullen sounds like he's coming back soon. Brandon Young could be an option again here very soon. So just put up some fun wins here going into the break, get more guys healthy, and see what the trade deadline brings, I guess.
The funny thing is, I'm actually optimistic that they could win more than half of those games, 20 games in June, because like you said, I think Westbrook will be back tomorrow. Maybe, Gary Sanchez, not much of a difference maker there, but he's on his way back. Tyler O'Neill's on his way back. Cedric Mullins on his way back. The town on this team was always too good to be this bad. So yeah, I actually think they could win 53 to 58% of their games the rest of the way out, but that's just not even close to enough. So I think, let's see, it would be funny if we went 16-4 and got back to 500. That'd be amazing. But no, I think my honest answer is 11-9. I think we could go 11-9 and we'd still be 10 games under 500.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere around 500, maybe a game or so under, like a 9-11 run wouldn't shock me. I do think that they'll steal a couple of wins in these really competitive series. But for me, you got to beat the teams that you're supposed to beat. So that means winning the series against the Angels. I think the series against the Rangers at home later this month should be a winnable series. Um, I'm not saying that you've got to win both series against the Rays, but managing a win in each series would at least be something. The Yankees, I have no clue what to expect there because I've seen the Orioles overperform against the Yankees a lot over the years, but I'm not necessarily counting on that happening later this month.
All right. So Ken would like to know, Samuel Basallo has 13 home runs this year, and he missed a pretty good chunk of time. And he's already hit 4 in June. How many will he have at the end of the season? Go back to Zach.
I'll go ahead and say that he hits 10 more home runs in the minor leagues. That gives him 23. And then he'll add one during a late season cameo in September. So 24 total between the majors and minors.
27. Basallo's for real. The power's for real. How much is in majors, minors? I don't know anymore. I'm not even going to take a guess at when he's getting called up. But I'm going to say at the end of the year, you look back and Samuel Basallo's 27 home runs.
I'm going to say he hits 17 more, gets to 30. Yeah, the power is insane. My favorite guy on Baseball America right now is the guy that does the breakdowns with the swings and the exit velocities. And he posts on Twitter, he loves Samuel Basallo, maybe more than me, which is hard to say, maybe more than us. But yeah, he's so for real. He's like the most, I think I forget, is it Eli? Do you know his name, Nick?
I know it's Eli. Ben Porat, something like that.
Shout out to you. Sorry, I didn't write it down first. If you're listening, obviously you are. Why wouldn't you be? We are talking about Sammy Basallo. I think he said that Basallo and Roman Anthony are like the two guys that are just like heads and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to potential with the bat. Yeah, I think he's going to hit 30 total, so 17 more. I'll say 13 more in the minors, 4 in the majors in September.
Yeah, and that question coming on the heels of Basallo's really, really good week in that Louisville series. It was generally a good week for Norfolk's bats, which we're going to cover a little bit later in the show, but 3 home runs in 4 games, and he's got 4 already on the month. So go on a different note here to talk about some minor league hitters that are struggling. EJ wants to know, what do you guys think accounts for Aberdeen's hitting woes? Guys like Jake Cunningham and Vance Honeycutt are understandable given what we assume are swing/decision overhauls, but guys like Griffith O'Farrell and Ethan Anderson were, quote, polished college bats that came out of the gate hot after the draft and, in my opinion, should be doing better at high A. I know that we've talked a lot about the challenges for hitters at Aberdeen and that it's not surprising when guys struggle there, but still, it does feel like there's a few guys underperforming relative to expectations. So, Bob, I'll start with you here. What do you make of this?
Man, I do not know. How's that for an answer? Yeah, because I even jinxed Aaron Estrada and was like, he's the one that's been consistent in building momentum. And then he goes out and goes 0 for 17 this week. Still love the guy, but I want to see the updated park factors when Baseball America releases them. I would love to see I know it's out there. I just haven't had the time or the thought about it at the right time when I did have the time to go look at the home away splits for these guys, right versus left. Like, what is it? The batter's eye, like Daryl Hernandez said at home. What is going on? It would not be great if this is just a bad draft class of bats, but I'm still pretty confident in Ethan Anderson's hitting ability. Austin O'Verne, love his potential, and he kind of showed out this week a little bit to get back on track. Vance Honeycutt, we knew he was a project, but it's even weird because the stuff doesn't add up with his swinging strike percentage combined with his strikeout rate. And I don't know. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in Aberdeen, but I can't just say that it's the run environment because all the pitchers pitch well in Aberdeen and continue to pitch well in Bowie. So it's not like, they're all getting shelled when they move up. I would love to know the answer if anybody has it.
Yeah, this is exactly why I think it was last week when we were talking about this, that to me, like Aberdeen is the most frustrating team in this system as far as the minor leagues are concerned, because you look at that double A roster and like you're not going to see much offense outside of Creed and Bradfield. When you watch Delmarva, until the FCL guys come up, which they are coming up tomorrow, which is awesome. Like there's not a lot there. That's going to be a rough team to watch as well. But Aberdeen was like this group of international prospects. It's boom or bust potential with these guys, but they all have like different profiles. Estrada, Arias, Thomas Sosa, like very different profiles among these guys. So it was going to be kind of fun of who pops, right, and who flames out, because not all of these guys are going to hit, but who rises to the top and who falls. Ethan Anderson was phenomenal to start the year. Austin O'Verne was playing exactly how I thought he would when I wrote about him over the offseason. Honeycutt was actually showing real improvements. And then this team just like the third week of the season just hit this wall. And really you haven't seen much reason for optimism since then, to be honest. Like O'Farrell's a little better. He's a 107 WRC plus over the last, 3 weeks. That's up 20 points. Like the first month and a half of the year, it was an 80 something WRC plus. So he's up about 20. It's like 87 or 86, I think, WRC plus. So he's better. BABIP is still incredibly low. I know Overn, we tend to blame like the hand for a while there. Maybe that caused him to miss like a week. Maybe that has something to do with some lingering effects. But I would think if that's that much of an issue, why wouldn't he just go back on the IL? So I don't know. There with the O'Verne. I think the power potential is truly overlooked with O'Verne. So maybe there's a bigger focus there, like maybe trying to balance the power. There's that same conversation we had about the Ryan McKenna when we first started the show 5 years ago, and Colton Cowser a couple years later. Maybe there's some of that. Ethan Anderson has probably been the most frustrating for me personally, just because last year the numbers were very good. I almost wonder with Ethan Anderson case if it's more work behind the plate, because he has played a lot of games defensively at catcher, and defensively, like maybe there's just this bigger emphasis on working on the catch and defense, and so the offense is taking a back seat. And that's what I'm going to tell myself here with Ethan Anderson, because like we talked about this before, there's a strong group of catchers in the upper levels, like AAA and AA, in the majors, obviously. Anderson didn't get to catch a lot in college because some guy named Kyle Teal was there. And now he's 21 years old. He's a young guy. So if he needs extra time in Aberdeen because you believe in his defensive abilities, then like that's fine. Spend all year in Aberdeen, work on your defense. Like you got Creed, you got this entire group in the upper levels of the minors. You're going to be okay. Maybe that's it. So maybe with Anderson, it's more focused on the defense. O'Verne has been a little bit better recently as well. Honeycutt's the one that has kind of regressed pretty hard over the last couple of weeks. Yeah, but this is definitely the most frustrating level for sure.
Yeah, it's been really frustrating. And what you said, Nick, about Ethan Anderson is really the only thing that I can pinpoint, because he was so good out of the draft last year and he got off to a really hot start this year. But as we pointed out multiple times, for being a college pick, he was pretty raw for a catcher because he didn't have a lot of innings behind the plate at Virginia. And maybe if he was, at first base or DH more often, the offense would be better. When Bob was talking about the home road splits, I decided to look it up for a couple of guys. And Anderson is a better hitter on the road than he is at home, but the numbers on the road still aren't great. 691 OPS in 91 plate appearances. O'Farrell, on the other hand, has been a much better hitter at home than he has been on the road for whatever reason. 99 plate appearances at home, 717 OPS. On the road, 114 plate appearances, that figures down at 549. So interesting home road splits there. I don't really know what to make of them. I will say that right now I separate O'Farrell a little bit from Anderson, because O'Verne's first month was really bad. But then the numbers in May were closer to what I was expecting to see from him over the course of this year. So I feel like that, because there's usually one of these players every year who starts the year in Aberdeen, doesn't perform that well there, at least in a traditional baseball statistics sense, gets promoted to Bowie, hits well there, and then you look at their numbers at the end of the year and balance it out, and it's about where you would expect. My guess right now is that if you're going to see that this year, like we've seen with Connor Norby, Colton Cowser, Kobe Mayo in the past, it's either going to be O'Farrell or O'Verne, because both of them show signs of life in different ways. Whereas Honeycutt, clearly that is a big project. And Anderson, if the emphasis is on defense, he could very well spend all year in high A, especially with Willems and Basayo ahead of him, not to mention that Bowie is generally, or Chesapeake is generally deep at catcher because you have Silas Ardois there and you have Adam Retzbach as well.
Yeah. With O'Farrell, like he's still running a 250 BABIP, which is up like 130 points from what it was at the beginning of the year, which is mind blowing. But let me see real quick. He's making contact just as much this year as he was last year in a small sample size, like 87%. He has a 5% swinging strike rate. Like it's one of the best. I think it is the best in the organization. I do think O'Farrell can get to where he wants to be. Again, debate the ceiling all you want. Not much of that there, but just to be the Griff O'Farrell that I think we were all hoping he would be, I think he can get to that point by the end of the year for sure. And I do think O'Verne looks like he might be turning a corner a little bit. It's just, I don't know. I think this will get to the end of next episode though, when I think we're going to end next week's episode or the next episode with a question about the draft class. The top of the draft class not looking so hot to start the year, but these are the higher ceiling guys, I think. So even if just one or two of these guys can start to hit a little bit, you're going to be looking back at this draft class, though, as a pretty solid class. I'm still pretty optimistic about this group as a whole.
Get them out of Aberdeen. Get them to Frederick next year, these draft picks, and let's hope things go a little more smoothly. It just seems something about Aberdeen is not working because even our best prospects the last several years, I mean, not quite as bad as this year's crop seems to be performing so far, but even when Colton Cowser, Connor Norby, and Kobe Mayo were being kind of mid down there, and then they go to Bowie and break out. So, yeah, it's weird.
Well, we can go more optimistic now to the next question from Devin, who says, who is your favorite Hall of Very Good Orioles prospect? Maybe never made the team, only a cup of coffee, fun name, random elite tool with nothing else, etc. Some guys from the past that have been like your guys in the system, I guess. Let's start with Zach.
The first name that popped in my head when I saw this question was Nicky Delmonico, who the Orioles had in the early 2010s in the system. They ended up trading him at the 2013 deadline for Francisco Rodriguez. And I remember when that trade happened at the time, being a little bit disappointed that they gave up on Delmonico because the year before he had been at Delmarva, and he was really the only hitter at Delmarva who did anything that was worth watching. And that was in my 2012 was my last year doing video for the Nationals in Hagerstown. And that year, the North Division, the South Atlantic League, Hagerstown, Greensboro, and Hickory were the best teams, not just in terms of their win-loss record, but in terms of prospects. At least that's the way it was seen at the time. And then you had a drop-off from there, and at the very, very bottom of that was Delmarva. The lineup was not good. Delmonico was really one of the handful of bright spots in there. And you look back on his numbers now, and in a system comparable to this one, let's not even go back to 2022, 2023 farm system with this organization. In this farm system now, Delmonico might be like a nice guy to have towards the back end of our top 40. But because he was not surrounded by a whole lot, the 2 years that he had in the Orioles system, he kind of looked a little bit better. Then he went to the Brewers and ended up eventually reaching the major leagues, but took a winding path to get there. He was suspended at one point when he was in Milwaukee's system. Then I think he was released by Milwaukee, then picked up by the White Sox and had a brief cameo in the major leagues for them. So suffice to say that he didn't have a long major league career, but that is a name that kind of is etched in my mind. And the thing that I found really odd when I went back and looked at Delmarva's roster that year, that was a bad team that produced 3 major league starting pitchers in Dylan Bundy, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Zach Davies. So go figure.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. I always would get attached as a kid growing up. Hayden Penn. I was excited for Hayden Penn to make his major league debut. He flamed out spectacularly. Well, not even spectacularly. He just kind of disappeared. But let's see, Rick Krivda way back in the day. I think Josh Bell, the original, the original, such a common name. There's been many Josh Bells, but the one we got from the Dodgers was a third baseman. I was like, yes, this guy's going to be really good, power hitting third baseman. Never happened. I'd say from the Elias era, Taron Vavra, for me, just really fun when he's healthy, when he's on the field, does a little things right, able to just hit the ball right between the outfield and the infield almost at will. Doesn't necessarily work as much when he got to the majors because, pitchers aren't scared of someone that's not going to, or that they can overpower. He don't really have much pop to the bat at all. But I just like the way he played when I watched him in the minors. And obviously Gene Pinto, he'll probably be on this list forever for me.
This could be a 4-hour episode by itself. I feel like just dudes sitting around talking about random Orioles minor leaguers. So like my whole journey following the Orioles I've been an Orioles fan my entire life, born and raised. But like the minor leagues, again, I grew up in Norfolk. So going to Tides games, they were a Mets affiliate until I graduated high school in 2016. So I only paid attention to Norfolk, the International League, until I started writing about Orioles prospects like 10 years ago, I think at this point. So I'm definitely on the more recent end, but like Brandon Klein was a guy that I really loved, and he did get that cup of coffee, a little more than a cup of coffee. It was like a full season basically, but he should have never made it to the major leagues. I think he had like 3 or 4 elbow surgeries plus a leg injury mixed in there, missed basically 3 years of ball, and then got to pitch 46 innings in the majors. He could have given up. He didn't. He's forever an Oriole. Chris Lee, more recently as well. I know we talked about him, I think, with John Mioli. Just the whole operation from the left side, just aesthetically pleasing to me. Nice guy as well. I got to talk to him once, and he was just super nice. So maybe that played a role into it as well. And also, I went back and looked, and Chris Lee actually used to be ranked above guys like Austin Hayes, Anthony Santander, and Tanner Scott on prospect lists. Always fun to go back and look at old prospect lists. But my GOAT is Jomar Reyes. Frederick, because Frederick is the closest, will be the closest affiliate to me. It's like an hour and 45 minutes. So when I was teaching and I had nothing to do all summer long, because I'm not making new lesson plans over the summer, I'm going to Frederick and catch some games. Richmond, Potomac, when they were the Potomac Nationals, like my summer of freedom down there. I like to go to Frederick games, and Jomar Reyes was there for like 3 years. And I would just always wonder, like, every time he came up to bat, it was like, this is going 500 feet. I know it. And then he punched that wall, and I always wonder what would happen if he didn't punch a cement wall many years ago. But I do think he's still playing indie ball, so good for him. But do you guys, to bounce off that, because I was tidying up my office today and I have my stash of Orioles cards over here, do you guys have a guy now that's like currently in the system who you're like, no one has to tell you that they're like maybe not that good, but for whatever reason, you're just like, I like to watch this guy, or I really like to follow him in the box scores at least and keep up with him? Because I can give you guys one guess on who my guy is. I think you guys could probably guess it, but do you guys have a guy right now?
And when we first started that show, that guy was Toby Welk. That was the guy for me. It was every box score. I wanted to see what he did, because even if he went 0 for 4, he probably drew a walk. Yeah, it seemed like the guy was an on-base machine. I feel like now it's Adam Retzbach, because you can find those like random games throughout the week where he'll get in and he'll go 1 for 3 with a double, and he'll bounce back and forth between catcher and first base. He's good organizational depth to have. I think that TT Bowens would probably be like the pick on this show.
Man, that's tough, because I would like to say Aaron Estrada, but I feel like he's kind of played himself out of that. But I've always, even when I was just scouting a stat line with him, I was intrigued. But yeah, who is it? I honestly, every time I see Trent Terzinski's name in the Aberdeen box score and watch his funky delivery on the mound, I'm like, I hope this guy makes it as a reliever. I wish I had a better answer for you. I wish I had more time to prep that one. But who's your guys, Nick?
Well, Vivek dropped a good name in there for other past guys. Christian Alvarado. Dude, I drove to Lynchburg one night because Christian Alvarado was pitching against oh crap, the Guardians reliever Tristan McKenzie. It was Christian Alvarado versus Tristan McKenzie. I drove down to Lynchburg to watch that game that night, and that was beautiful. Chris Clare got a base hit off Tristan McKenzie, and I thought, I was like, Chris Clare, this is a dude. This is a real guy in the system. That was one of the most fun minor league games I've been to in recent memories. I loved Alvarado, but yeah, right now it's Carlos Tavera. Obviously, he's the dude.
Oh yeah. I guess I'm still a Frederick Ben Cosme fan, even if he's kind of had a nightmare season, other than the last week or so. But always fun to watch. Vivek. He said Chris Ray in the chat. I always love how he would point at home run balls like they were pop-ups, and they would just go 400 plus feet. That was always awesome.
He owns a brewery in Virginia now. You want to go down there and tell him that?
Yeah, I'll take the point up at the sign on the. All right. Tommy Carr would like to know, who is the 2024 pitching prospect most likely to experience a Braxton Bragg, please be okay-esque velo jump and move up the list fast in 2026? I'm assuming that means like draft prospect. Nick?
I just want to talk about old minor leaguers. I think Cohen Aiken, would that be like an obvious pick here? Bragg was, I have it up here. According to, let me pull up the Baseball America. I know they have it real quick. Bragg was 90 to 93, and he's now sitting 94 and 95. Of course, he's got even more in the tank, but so that's a significant jump there. Cohen Aiken, he got that start in Hartford. Shout out to Hartford, the Yard Goats, and their velo on the broadcast. And Aiken was 91 to 93, touch 94. I know there's more to it than just height and weight, but Bragg and Aiken are similar heights and weights. I know there's a lot more that goes into this. I don't know, maybe more time in a pro organization after spending his entire college career at an NAIA school. Maybe Aiken comes out in 2026 with a little bit more velo jump, and he is next year's Braxton Bragg sans injury scare.
Yeah, I do think it's the right choice. A guy that I would also shout out from last year's draft class that's healthy right now is Carter Rustad, because Rustad actually was experiencing a little bit of a velo spike last year at Missouri. And according to Eric Longenhagen, was 94-96 in his initial pro outings, though Longenhagen notes that the move to the bullpen might be what helps sustains that, or what has helped sustain that. We know with the Orioles that there is a tendency to sometimes move guys from the bullpen to the rotation in high A, and so far they have not done that with Rustad. But I'd be curious to see if they start to stretch him out at some point. Could you start to see higher velo from him more consistently? And even if they don't, is that velo spike going to make him a more intriguing relief prospect? So that's a guy I would have my eye on right now. And if they were healthy, Carson Dorsey and Christian Rodriguez, I think, would both be in this conversation. But we haven't, I know we're not going to see Rodriguez pitch this year, and I don't know if we're going to see Dorsey at all either.
Yeah, this is a interesting question. Aiken was the one that was like popped into my head first. Absolutely. I think I could definitely see him adding a tick or two in the offseason. Vivek in the chat says Sebastian Gongora. I mean, he already throws pretty hard, but yeah, I could see him continue to creep up there. And who knows which guy's going to add a kick change or a death ball or whatever the next big pitching creation is out there. But I think my ultimate pick is going to be Evan Yates, who Nick wrote about a little bit this morning in the Substack. And yeah, he's kind of reminding me of a Braxton Bragg in the sense that it just hit me like this could be the guy that just stays at Delmarva all year, puts up good numbers, and people are like, okay, you can move him up now, but then he'll come out next season throwing like 2 miles per hour harder with the sharper slider or whatever. And then explode a little bit. Maybe not quite as Braxton Bragg. We haven't seen that before. Don't know if we'll see it again. But yeah, Evan Yates would be my pick.
Go to this question now from EJ. What gives with Fernando Peguero? The org keeps bouncing him between Delmarva and Norfolk. He's performed about the same at each level, neither of which he's hit. It seems like if the org just needs a body in Norfolk, there are older organization depth pieces that don't have growth, upside, maturing to do. Now, let's give a little bit of background. Peguero, still just 20 years old. What we've seen so far in his career is that he runs very well. He was a pick for the spring training breakout game for the Orioles. He was on their roster, but EJ is right here that we have seen Peguero kind of bounce around in a way that we're not used to seeing with prospects this young. So I'm curious to see what you guys think, starting with Nick.
His StatCast page is hilarious. It's like first percentile, like in many categories. I almost feel bad for him. I don't know. I know I've had a conversation with a former international prospect in the system, who had nothing bad to say about the organization, but some of the comments he made were just like, yeah, I could see that being the case of just how certain players might be treated in the organization. And I don't know if I'm like, I could be completely wrong here. I don't even know. I'm just assuming, but I almost wonder if it's like a guy like Peguero, Noel Borth-Romero. These guys are, they might all be in that same bucket as like an Anthony Servideo and some other guys in AA right now who the org probably doesn't view them as having much of a ceiling. They're org pieces. And Servideo is an older guy. Maybe that stability of like, hey, like here's your role, but we're going to keep you in Bowie for the whole year. Peguero and some of these younger international prospects who also maybe ultimately fill in that same bucket, they're younger kids. You can bounce them around a little bit more. I don't know. I don't know if that goes into any thinking or kind of behind the scenes actions of how certain prospects or minor leaguers are treated in different instances. I really don't know, but that's just kind of my maybe guess. I don't know, because I truly don't believe it's because like they actually think he can handle AAA and like be like a legitimate prospect in this system, unless we're all missing something completely here, and that I think would be even more mind blowing. But
it is certainly strange. I'm going to do a lot of speculating right now, especially because Peguero is 20, and Luis Guevara went up to AA for a while, and he's 19. And I think it's like these are guys that are bat to ball. They have speed. They can hold their own defensively. They'll make the routine plays. Like, it's not going to hurt them. They're not the elite prospects, the top 50 prospects that, you want to make sure they get their at-bats. Maybe it's like these guys are young enough. They can go experience the upper levels, hold their own when they are called upon, and gain some valuable experience for down the line potentially. And maybe even it was like, all right, who wants to be this guy? Raise your hand. And maybe these are the guys that were just like, I'm willing to do it. I don't know, but it's certainly strange because it's usually like the Noel Borth-Romero who's been around a while, and it's pretty clear that he's not going to turn into anything. I mean, odds are Peguero and Guevara aren't either, but they are both guys that have tools, and that Peguero was on, I think, Fangraph's list at the very bottom, but I think Guevara has some pretty good skills, and he's only 19. So that's, I do think there is some upside there. So it's certainly interesting. I would love to get like Anthony Villa on here and be like, even if it was like off the record, like, what's up with that?
Yeah, I really don't have a clear answer, and it's a good question. And it kind of what I think about when I see that question and see how this year has played out is that if the Orioles wanted to just put Peguero in a place where he could get regular bats and have a consistent routine, this Delmarva roster was especially early on in the year when Ellis Cuevas was on the IL, that was the perfect time to do it. There's not a ton of upside with that lineup. You have a couple of injuries early on. Just stick him out there and see what he can do. But they've kind of continued to do this routine with him of moving him up and down. I do think that there is something to what Bob said, though, which is that there's one thing Peguero does really well. He's a good base runner. He's got good speed. He's been a pretty efficient base stealer in his career. And you look at how the Orioles use him, basically he can go all over the infield. He can play second, he can play short, he can play third, he can play any of the three outfield spots. So you just kind of move him around, and if nothing else, he's your late inning pinch runner, defensive replacement who maybe gets at bats here and there. And if someone really needs a day off or someone gets hurt, it's another body there. For the sake of his own career, I would like to see him get an extended run at one level sometime soon, but I don't know if that's going to happen.
The crazy thing is, like EJ said, he's like got similar numbers no matter which level he's at. Because in low A, Delmarva, 100 plate appearances this year. He had a 193 batting average, 65 WRC plus, 10% walk rate, 26% strikeout rate, and was actually, WRC plus was lower at 55%, but in 51 plate, he's got 51 plate appearances in AAA. That's crazy. He's batting 200 with the 55 WRC plus, a 12% walk rate, 23.5% strikeout rate. So better numbers there. It's the BABIP's identical. It's very interesting. Is it me? Okay. I believe I have the next question, and that would be from, our good buddy, Kevin Brown. Who's your favorite broadcaster? Of course, Kevin Brown would want to know. One O's broadcaster and one non-O's broadcaster. Let's go, Zach.
I think for O's broadcasters, if we're going to count color commentators, I would take Ben McDonald. For play-by-play, it's a coin toss for me because I think that the axes are very strong between Melanie Newman, Kevin Brown, Brett Hollander, and Jeff Arnold. I might lean towards Jeff Arnold, but I think all four are pretty solid. And then for non-O's broadcasters, I try to listen to John Miller as much as I can, whether it's turning on a Giants game or catching a few innings on the radio, because he's, in my opinion, one of the best to ever do it. But another broadcast team that I don't think gets enough credit, Charlie Steiner and Rick Monday call a really good game. They're a good broadcast team. They've been doing it for a long time with the Dodgers. Every now and then, if I'm just trying to kill time before I go to bed, I'll flip the Dodgers game on, even if it's just on audio, to listen to them for a few innings. I think they're really good.
Yeah, favorite Orioles broadcaster is far and away for me. It's Ben McDonald. I want former pitchers in the booth. I just enjoy their perspective of the game more. I find the pitching side of baseball more fascinating than the hitting side. And I feel like, I don't need a rates and barrel style breakdown of pitching during a broadcast. That's too much for me when I'm just watching and enjoying a game. But Ben McDonald, I feel like, is a really good mix of just entertainment and also like giving you kind of the behind the scenes scoop with pitchers and also a good kind of like, hey, I don't understand why a pitcher is doing this or whatever. And Ben McDonald, break it down to you, just one-on-one kind of deal. I enjoy it. I love him calling college baseball games even more. Especially when he's calling LSU games, it's very, he went to LSU. He's calling LSU games. He pitched for the Orioles. He's calling Orioles games. So he loves both those organizations. But I also think he keeps it kind of fair for the most part. So I really enjoy Ben McDonald. Non-Orioles broadcast, I personally, my opinion, I don't think any combination in baseball can hold a candle to Mark Grant and Don Orsillo out in San Diego. I love watching those two guys. I think they are hilarious. I have midnight and I'm watching West Coast baseball and I'm watching a Padres game and I'm dying laughing half the time because those guys clearly love their job and it bleeds through the broadcast. And there are a lot of broadcasts out there where it's work for a lot of guys. But those guys, they genuinely love the game. They genuinely love the Padres, and it shows. So they're a lot of fun to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a surprise pick here. For me, it's Kevin Brown and Ben McDonald for the Orioles, and it's the StatCast team, whether it's Jason Benetti or Kevin Brown again with Trevor May or whoever they have in this whenever they do their stat castings. I like those. So yeah, boring answer, but that's the truth.
And thank you, as always, for the mailbag questions. We did get some questions about the deadline that we didn't run with just because we want to see how the Orioles do over the next few weeks, see how the rumor mill develops. But we certainly will address the deadline as we get closer to that. We'll head in now, though, to our final segment of the show. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing. Located at 1421 Ridgely Street, Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre or post game drink. And while you're at the game and the Orioles are at home this week, you could go to the beer stand behind home plate and get one of Checker Spot's signature beers. The Bird is the word. And we should mention here, congratulations to Checker Spot. They're going to celebrate their 7th anniversary this weekend. There's an event on the afternoon of June 14th. Check out their social media channels for more details on that. It looks like it's going to be a great time. And now for our last call segment, we will do our usual shout out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or maybe just something interesting in their stat line that we want to point out. And I'm going to start this week with Nick because he's got one lower level prospect that we've talked about before, highlighted just last week, actually, and then a pitcher that he wrote about this week over our Substack.
Yeah, my hitter is tiptoeing the line of cheating here again. Emilio Sanchez. He is 32 on our list, though, so outside the top 30. Yeah, he was the big bonus baby last year, the $1.3 million man in the 2024 class. Had 48 walks in 48 games, but a sub 700 OPS. Barely hit 200. He's back in the Dominican Summer League this year and off to a strong start. It's only been a week, but last week he hit 333 with a double and 3 walks and 2 stolen bases. So good start there for Sanchez, batting at the top of the order there. I believe he's Orioles black, which is like the good team this year. I think last year was Orioles orange, like the dominant team, but this year it's Orioles black. Which also, like, doing some more research on the Dominican Summer League, I found an interview that Andy Fabian did in Spanish, and the English translation got a little wonky at times. Shout out to YouTube for that. But Andy talked about how like the competition between DSL Orioles orange and black itself is intense behind the scenes, and like they don't even talk to each other if like when they play each other and one team loses. I loved hearing that competitiveness of those young kids. But yeah, I have no qualms about the international side of this program. Obviously, we're hyping it up a lot recently for good reason, but it would be nice to see one of these top guys outside of Basayo, which every organization is shooting for a Basayo. Just you land a Basayo once every 10 years, you're doing something right. But outside of Basayo, like there's a lot of guys like not performing up to expectations so far. It would be nice to see one of these other big bonus babies hit, and good to see Sanchez off to a strong start to start his Dominican Summer League. And yeah, my pitcher is Evan Yates. Wrote about him again on Substack this morning. The first start was phenomenal at the beginning of the year. The next 2 starts were not that good. I'm like, oh, here we go. There's your 20th round draft pick. But then actually, since his 3rd start of the year, so we are looking at the last 34 innings, he has a 2.36 ERA, a 163 average against, a near 30% strikeout rate with an 8% walk rate. That's very strong. 30% call strike plus whiff percentage, swinging strike rate over 14%. He's doing a lot of good. And he has been super strong, minus like 1 hiccup in his last 6 or 7 outings. He is a little bit older. He is 22, but he did not pitch last year in 2024 for Cal State Fullerton. So I feel like he's maybe on that Trey Gibson path where this year is about building him back up. But while the Orioles are building him back up, he's excelling. Not to the Trey Gibson level per se, but he's having a strong start to the year. So pretty good to see out of a 20th round draft pick who missed a year of college ball. I like what I'm seeing so far.
Good stuff. Yeah, I went with my pitcher. It's going to be quick because he just made his major or professional American League. American professional debut in the Dominican Summer League. Nakel Cruz, who was signed out of Cuba. He is 25 years old, will be 26 in September, but he's not gonna. He's starting in the DSL. I'm assuming just to get his pitch count up. Hopefully, he transfers over to the States at some point in the next few weeks. Would suck if we had to do a Jordan Sanchez and wait all the way till 2026 to get him over here. But he made his team debut, 3 innings pitched, 3 strikeouts, 1 walk, no hits, no runs allowed. Just interesting. I think he's mostly like a slider curve guy with a low 90s fastball, but interesting arm. This is why you hold some money back during the international period, or at least the Orioles have tended to do so, because these guys can pop up and they can grab him. So it was nice to see him show up a few weeks after who's the guy? Cordero. Who's the guy that tweets it out all the time?
Ramiro.
Yes. Want to shout him out because he's always on top of these things. But it was like he announced that he signed like a few weeks ago and then nothing. And then he finally did. So that's that. And then Jeremiah Jackson, another 25-year-old on my list here, who was drafted in the second round in 2018 by the Angels. He was a minor league signing in the offseason where I was just like, okay, whatever. Didn't really think much of it. He's just going to be like an organizational filler. I thought he would start at AAA, started at AA, so my expectations were even lower. Got a 93 WRC plus there, batted 254 with a 703 OPS, playing some solid defense, not really walking, like 5%, but not striking out either, 16%. Gets promoted along with Trey Gibson and Sebastian Gongora, goes way under the radar during that. But then in his first week in AAA, 24 plate appearances, batted 304 with an OPS over 1,000, a 165 WRC plus, had 3 home runs in that first week. And maybe there's something here. He was obviously a high draft pick, still only 25 for as long as he's been in professional baseball. So maybe there's something that they're doing under the hood to his strikeouts are way down based off of the rest of his career. So clearly something but is working, but then the walks are also down. So who knows, but he deserves a shout out for his performance this week.
I'll start with my hitter and I'll go down the DSL. Jose Pena is off to a terrific start down there. He had a very good first week. In 5 games. He went 4 for 13 at the plate while walking 2 times and striking out 3. And then he rounded that out with a 1 for 4 performance on Monday afternoon when the Orioles Black took on a Guardians affiliate. Pena, we talked about a lot on last week. So this is probably, at least among the position players in the Dominican Summer League this year, the guy you want to have your eye on, or at least one of the top guys. Part of the most recent international free agent class. He's only 16 years old, and he's not going to turn 17 until August. So he's one of the youngest players in the DSL this year. And for reasons we got into on last week, so it's possible he ends up playing 2 years in the DSL. But so far, off to a really, really good start, which is great to see for such a young player. And then for pitchers, I'm going to go with Eber Cartaya, who had his best outing of the season last week when the Shorebirds took on Fredericksburg. On Friday, Cartaya went 6 1/3 innings, not giving up a run, while scattering 2 hits, striking out 8, and walking 1. Cartaya was a guy that we had tabbed as the breakout candidate coming into this year based on the way he performed late last season in Delmarva, and he got off to a really rough start. You look at his first 3 outings or so of this year, and they were pretty ugly. High walk totals, getting hit around a lot, but he has settled down. And just to run off some numbers, since his first outing in May, which was back on May 6th, Cartaya has thrown 26 innings, struck out 27 batters while walking 16 and posting a 3.46 ERA. Nick, as you point out in Substack this week, Cartaya still has a lot of work to do with his command. He needs to cut back on the walks. He's also hit an alarmingly high number of batters this year.
Everybody.
But he's pretty much hit everybody. But the swing and miss stuff is there, and we're starting to see more and more of it from him.
Yeah, I saw somebody else made a point. It's like he's also one of these guys who, like, he's super tall, a lot of limbs, and these guys, these younger international prospects specifically, who hit that late growth spurt and they're just all arms and legs, like, give them time, and see what happens. I like that he's improving. I like all these picks we had this week because even Cruz, I think is super interesting. Watch his start over on YouTube the other day. His career walk rate's pretty high, pitching professionally in Cuba, but like he's a thick boy who can run it. Like he can run up to like 90. I think Ramiro said he can get up to like 94 from the left side. Like he will be in Bowie probably in like 2 weeks. I'm excited. That's the fun. Like even if there's like a no risk signing, and if he pans out and you got some lefty throwing 94 and 95, who's 26 years old and super experienced, TBD what happens. But yeah, some fun young international players as well to highlight this week.
And that does it for this show. We'll be back later this week to look at players who are off to slow starts in the minors this year, but that we think are poised to get out of their slumps. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member of our community today. For as little as $3 a month, you can have access to patron exclusive channels in our Discord chat, as well as bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, and monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. In fact, we just released our June update last week, so you'll have access to that and a lot more by becoming a patron. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network. Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to look at players who are off to slow starts in the minor leagues. This comes a week after we profiled some guys that were breakout candidates who've gotten off to strong starts in 2025. This week, we're taking an opposite look. We're going to look at some players that we thought were poised for big years in 2025, but have so far underperformed or dealt with injuries. But we're going to talk about the reasons why we think these players are going to get over their humps and put up strong numbers by the end of the year. And it's an interesting mix of prospects that the three of us picked, and we'll make our case for each of our players in this episode. But I'm going to start with Bob, because Bob has picked a player who was not just getting a lot of love on this show, but getting a lot of love nationally coming into this year. But so far has been injured. And when we saw him early on this year, was really struggling.
Yeah, and I have no idea where he is, what he's been doing, when he's coming back. But my pick is Keeler Morphe. We were ecstatic about this guy at the end of last year, and for good reason. I'll stand by that. I mean, you just don't see guys go from the DSL straight up to Delmarva and continue to hold their own at that level with the stuff he had. I mean, it was electric, and it was still electric this season. Unfortunately, it was electric everywhere but in the strike zone. But then he has a finger injury, whether it was a chicken or the egg situation where a finger injury causes the lack of command and control, or vice versa. You know, hopefully they're working on things behind the scenes. Hopefully he's feeling better and getting ready to get back. And I still think the stuff is so good that you're going to give this guy every chance in the world to live up to it. Because even if it's ultimately a bullpen, a relief prospect, I think it's going to be fun to watch all the way through. But I just have a feeling that he's going to come back and make us put him right back up the list, to trend him the other way. He's kind of fallen down, obviously, from injury and, you know, performance. It's whatever. It was very early in the season, only a couple games. So I think he's going to make his presence known before the year is out.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who, like, even international evaluators and prospect writers took note of this kid because of his stuff. He's still just 19. So I don't think the injury was very serious at all. It was clearly an excuse to get him on the IL. And of course, just because you see a minor leaguer on the 7-day IL, again, it could have an amputation. That means absolutely nothing. They can keep him on that as long as they want to. I do think it'll be a good sign, though, when he says, you know, Keeler Morphe has been assigned to the FCO Orioles on a rehab start. I think that means the organization is confident they've got him to a good place, and he's going to be ready to go. And it's clear it's not going to be injury related. I don't believe for a second that he is hurt in any way. I think that maybe there was a finger injury, although it could have just been like dude, throw a finger up. Like we're gonna walk out, throw the finger up today. When we walk out today, throw your finger up, be like, this hurts, so we can throw you on the IL. I don't buy for a second there's any injury, but there were major issues that needed to be corrected, clearly. So we all watched that. Everybody saw that in the spring breakout game. We all watched his first couple of outings here with Delmarva, and it was the same exact thing. Yeah, we talked about it a lot. I do agree, though. There's zero reason, I think, to be, to write him off at this point. Again, still just 19 years old, still extremely young, took a big jump, and maybe it was too big of a jump. And so now they got to reel it back in a little bit. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we see him back on the mound. And at least he can get, a month or two back in Delmarva and kind of start to right that ship a little bit. And even if it's only a month or two and he can just show moderate improvements, you got another full, healthy offseason. He can come back next year. He can still get up to Aberdeen by the time he's 20 years old and still be like right on schedule with a lot of these other younger international prospects. So yeah, no concern yet.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective, Nick, because when you step back and you look at it, you realize that the Orioles were uncharacteristically aggressive with Morphe last year, because where you've seen kind of aggressive, bold moves with position players under Mike Elias and his front office, but not necessarily as much with pitchers, and especially not with pitchers this young. I watched Morphe's outings early in the season, and to me, a lot of what was going on was mechanical. We talked about it on an episode at length back in April about issues with his delivery, issues repeating it, issues with it being too quick. The stuff was still there, though. The fastball velocity was still there. I remember one start where he really struggled, but actually threw a couple of good sliders. So there were signs there that the stuff is still intact, but something was off mechanically. And I'm hoping that with this time that he's had away from game action, that they figured out what that was, regardless of whether or not it was tied to injury, and can get him right. Even if, let's say he ends up in the FCL for a little bit and he makes a few starts at Delmarva over the last couple months of the season. If he's able to salvage that after the slow start to the year, I would be happy with that outcome.
Agreed. I'm going to my guy. I guess we'll stick with Delmarva. And I'm going to look at, I want to dig deeper than just last year's draft class, because I see we're going to talk about one next. But, Vance Honeycutt seemed like kind of low-hanging fruit there, and TBD on him. But going back to Delmarva, I did look at Ellis Cuevas, and that's my pick. I also want to look at Chase also, but he's still at the top of my to-do list. Like, I want to sit down. I know he's got an outing where there's velo, at least on the broadcast, so you can better get a better idea of what he's been doing, what he's throwing. So I still want to sit with that outing and watch and look at his outings a little bit deeper. But because I haven't done that yet, I went with Ellis Cuevas. Just 21 games so far with Delmarva, and he's hitting just 235 with no home runs, despite some mammoth home runs last year. 637 OPS. But remember, he got a very late start to the year because of a hamstring injury. So he's only been back for about a month, not even, and a big chunk of that time was rehabbing in the FCLs. But if last week was any indication, he might be getting his timing back and starting to settle in a little bit. It wasn't like eye-popping, but it was definitely his best week since he returned from injury. He's right at the same number of at-bats this year in Delmarva as he was last year in Delmarva. And again, this year's at-bats are coming off a hamstring injury. Small sample sizes, it's only like 80-something at-bats, but I'm seeing an 11% boost in his contact rate. That's now close to 80%. Swinging strike rate down from 15% to 9%. Overall, the strikeout rate is down to 18%. But a couple things with Cuevas. I think his defensive home is more solidified. They want to see him in the outfield. He's going to get that outfield run. Fangraphs gives him a 55 speed grade, so just south of plus speed. I don't think he's going to maintain a 20% strikeout rate. He's probably not going to win any Gold Gloves in anytime soon, but I do think he could be an athletic corner outfield bat with, even if it's just an average hit tool and a tick above average power. I think this is a guy who legitimately could find a role in the major leagues if a lot still has to go right, but it's projecting very long term. But I think Cuevas is like an overlooked prospect in this system because he does do one thing very well, two things very well, pulling the baseball and pulling the baseball in the air. In his tiny frame, he can produce some massive power And so I think that's going to help him play as he goes through the organization. But I'm excited to see once he fully settles in, gets his timing down, pay attention to what he does over the second half of this season, because I do think that there's a bounce back in store for Cuevas, and he's going to have a strong end to the year.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love this pick, and it's interesting. He's got a 235 average, excuse me, 637 OPS. So you're like, darn, I thought he'd be. That's pretty bad. No, it's a 100 WRC plus. Like, I think the run environment in low A and just the offensive output is not great. So even with the slow start, he's still league average, and he is only 20 years old still. So that's hard to forget, or easy to forget, hard to remember. I don't know. But his walk rate is up. Well, up from where he was overall last year. He was a little bit higher in low A, but 13.4 walk rate is very good. 18.3% strikeout rate is very good as well. And yeah, since, let's see, a slow start, I think since May 25th, he is batting 273 with 652 OPS. So I guess that didn't really change much other than the batting average. But yeah, I do like Ellis Cuevas, and I think he's going to continue to get better as the season goes on. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't spend a ton of time at Delmarva once he does get in a groove there for a while.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about Cuevas right now, just because he did miss a good chunk of time with the injury, and I'm glad to see, before you even started to rattle off those numbers, Nick, the one thing that had jumped out at me about Cuevas was the strikeout to walk numbers are about where you would want them to be. You're not seeing the strikeouts go way up or the walks go way down. They're right about what I think you could expect based on what he's done in the past. And if anything, they're a little bit better than what we've seen from him. And usually when you have a player that is maintaining in those areas, I feel like eventually they're going to get out of their slump. It's just a matter of time. And for him, it's just a matter of getting comfortable in the box, getting reps, and I think it will click for him. And I think you will see the bat come around, even if it takes a while for him to get to Aberdeen, or even if he spends all year in Delmarva. I think you're going to look at his final totals at the end of this season and feel like he's in a good place as a prospect. I'll go to my guy now, and it's someone that we've talked about a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to take a deeper dive tonight, and that's Austin O'Verne. And there's some things with O'Verne that if you look at his stat line right now, the strikeout rate has pretty consistently been above 30% this year, though now it has dropped down a little bit, just under 30% at 29%. Batting average 242, OPS 732. So the counting stats, admittedly with O'Verne, aren't great, but there's a more complicated picture that emerges when you start to really dig into how his season has unfolded so far. He got off to a really hot start at Aberdeen, but then was out for about a week in mid-April with what we heard was a hand injury. Officially, O'Verne never went on the IL, but he lost roughly a week's worth of games, maybe a little bit less, before coming back, and was really struggling at the plate from the middle of April until about the middle of May. 17-game stretch from April 16th to May 8th. O'Verne was 7 for 56 at the plate with 23 strikeouts to 6 walks and just 2 extra base hits. If you want to look for a point, though, where it seemed like things started to turn, on May 9th, he had a 3 for 5 performance against Jersey Shore. And with that game included, since then, he's appeared in 24 contests, gone 24 for 76 at the plate, including 7 extra base hits, 22 strikeouts to 12 walks. So the numbers are clearly a lot better, and you're starting to see the power come through a little bit more. Nick touched on this on our episode earlier this week, and I think that there is some truth in it, where the Orioles are trying to tap into O'Verne's power a little bit more. And if you go back and you look at some recent examples from Aberdeen, we know that power was something they were working on with Colton Cowser. His strikeout rate was much higher than anybody was expecting in Aberdeen. I mean, how many questions a week were we getting that season about the Colton Cowser problem? Dylan Beavers, in his year there, high strikeout rate, and then he got promoted to Bowie, and over time, the strikeout rate has kind of gradually dropped. I think we knew O'Verne was a project coming into this year, and a pretty ugly slump that lasted about a month put a real dent in his stat line. But there's reason to believe that he's going to emerge out of it here, that he is emerging out of it now, and is going to end the year on pretty solid footing.
He's scorching hot right now. I think over his last 10 games or so, he's batting like 375, 1100 OPS, 22% walk rate, 25% strikeout rate, 7 steals and 8 attempts. Like, honestly, if Vance Honeycutt never ends up being more than like a Ryan McKenna type 4th, 5th outfielder, Austin O'Verne could easily reach the potential that, we thought Vance Honeycutt might have had, and he still does. I'm not writing him off by any chance, by any means, but I just think Austin O'Verne is at a similar level to Vance Honeycutt with the tools, and maybe even better when it comes to just base stealing ability. I don't know. It just seems like he gets to the speed in game on the bases more than Vance has been able to.
That's exactly why when I wrote about him over the offseason, I just felt like he was getting completely overlooked. And it's easy to do because Vance Honeycutt was the first round pick. Enrique Bradfield Jr., everyone's in love with Enrique Bradfield Jr. for many good reasons. We all are as well. But it's like they have a guy who's in this tier as well. Like if you love Judd Fabian, Austin O'Verne can do a lot more than Judd Fabian, I feel like, and could be a much better prospect. And it's the big thing with me is that I also maybe kind of realize O'Verne might be a little bit more of a project than probably I anticipated, because you also go back. He made he had a swing overhaul, pretty much the whole thing in the box. He overhauled, and he did that in the Cape Cod League essentially, because right before the draft, because he had a fantastic freshman year at USC. He was actually had first round draft grades put on him after his freshman year at USC. And then his sophomore year, he hit for more home runs, I think, but everything else like tanked. And he was below league average bat his sophomore year. Then he went to the Cape Cod League, changed a lot of things in his swing, and found results. And then the Orioles are now, they bought the dip, and they bought him back on the rise a little bit there with the performance on the Cape. But still, I do think that power is for real. And to get this to load whenever, Fangraphs, I love you, but Jesus Christ. So I wanted to see what Eric had to say about him, and here we go. I haven't read this in a very long time, and Eric had said, in less than a year since turning pro, O'Verne has begun to add meaningful strength, and his swing has undergone an overhaul. It's much more athletic than in 2024, features bigger movements. His chances of getting to meaningful power seem much better now with his new swing and improving physique. Hasn't cost him his speed, still profiles as a center fielder long term. I think that's kind of what it is. He's settling into probably some more small tweaks the organization made on top of the big tweaks, and they want to try to find that balance between, you're a super athletic kid who can put bat to ball and do damage as maybe more of a line drive hitter, but that power potential is very real, and we want to bring that out of you. And he's trying to find that balance, and maybe he's starting to, as Bob rattled off those numbers here over the last 2 weeks or so. I love this kid. I think he's someone that you want to watch very closely. He continues to get overshadowed in this Aberdeen lineup, but as the rest of this Aberdeen lineup struggles, if he can catch fire and he be the guy that steps up, and you combine him with Nate George as well, down there in the lower levels, a 16th round draft pick, I think that's what will lead us into this final point here. This draft class as a whole, don't judge it based off the first round draft pick, because you zoom out a little bit. There's a lot of big things happening with this draft class.
And that is the perfect segue into our final segment. Last call, brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridley Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre or post-game drink. And with the Orioles in town all week, make sure you stop by the beer stand behind home plate at Camden Yards to pick up the Bird is a Word, one of Checker Spot's signature beers. And once again, congratulations to Checker Spot on their upcoming 7th anniversary celebration. That will be taking place at Checker Spot this Saturday, June 14th. Check out their social media channels to learn more about what should be a very fun event. And this is the question tonight here in our last call segment. I think this is one we're going to spend a little bit of time on. Almost a year out from last year's draft, how would you assess the 2024 class? While some of the bats towards the top of the class are struggling and a few pitchers are hurt, the Orioles are getting some positive returns further down the class. So it's kind of an interesting balance here where you have Vance Honeycutt at the top, struggling. In fact, the first three players the Orioles took kind of performing below expectation at Aberdeen right now with Honeycutt, Ethan Anderson, and Griff O'Farrell. But then you see these pockets where you've got Austin O'Verne, who we just talked about a moment ago, seemingly picking things up. He was your third round pick. You go a little bit further down, Nate George, your 16th round pick, having an excellent start to his professional career down in the FCL. Cohen Aiken, 14th round pick, has been one of the better stories on the pitching side in the minor leagues this year, what he's done. Evan Yates in the 20th round, putting up a pretty solid year. Sebastian Gongora, 11th round pick, putting up a solid year. But then when you look through the top 10 in particular, you see some question marks. So I'm curious to get your guys' thoughts on this. How would you assess the 2024 class as it stands right now?
It's so weird. It's a strange case just because Dorsey and Hernandez, the pitchers, like we talked about, they're hurt. Christian Hernandez out for the year. Dorsey hopefully coming back at some point. We have no idea. We've talked about the disappointments at the top, but Austin O'Verne is a nice little breakout. Ryan Stafford, definitely the biggest disappointment for me. I don't know what's going on there at the plate. DJ Layton, I like what we're seeing. He's continuing to improve in the FCL as that season goes on. Aiken, Gongora, even Michael Caldone, going back to the last episode, who could get a velo bump and kind of break out. I feel like he's another guy that's like, he's performing well and it's intriguing, but maybe there is another step at some point. Carter Rustad, Evan Yates, there's a lot to like, but the guys at the top are kind of leaving us wanting more. So I don't know. You want a couple breakouts. Maybe Nate George is just going to have to make up for the Griff O'Farrell or Vance Honeycutt, whichever one of those doesn't make it. And again, it's still so early. It's less than a year since they were drafted. There's still plenty of time for these guys to develop. And, maybe once they get to AA Bowie in a more hitter-friendly environment, then the confidence goes up. But once again, the pitching is lapping the hitting the last couple of years. But obviously Nate George is huge up arrow for him. Can't wait to see him in Delmarva starting tomorrow. And yeah, we haven't really talked about those promotions, but very exciting stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's been 2 months, right? And essentially, like, some of these guys made their debuts last year, but I don't care what you do. Your draft year, like, you just played a full college season, and now you're jumping into pro ball for a month, less than a month. Like, I really don't take any stock into initial draft year numbers. So this is their first full year, and it's been 2 months. And so yeah, that's why I'm more optimistic about this class, because it is rounds 11 through 20 have been fire. All those names, you just routed off: Gongora, Aiken, 11th, 14th round, Rustad in the 15th round, Yates in the 20th round, George in the 16th round. Like, those guys are really catching fire. And, like, legitimately, Sebastian Gongora, we talked about last week on the breakout episode. Go back and listen to that if you missed that, on full thoughts as to why, like, Gongora is, like, legitimate here to pay attention to. Evan Yates, we just talked about. I just wrote about. Nate George very well. This is a 16th round high school pick. George could be on a top 100 list. I wouldn't be shocked if Kylie McDaniel puts him on ESPN's top 100 list by the end of the year. When's this episode coming out? Thursday. So George is going to have 2 games probably under his belt, at least 1 game probably under his belt at Delmarva by the time this comes out. If he comes out the gates hot, and I'm not talking about the next week or two, but we've got June, July, August, 3 months of the minor league season left. If he can have a strong 3 months here in Delmarva, he's going to be a top 100 prospect on ESPN's list, at least, no doubt. And there's still some high upside guys in rounds 1 through 10. Some of the senior signs, like Jack Crowder, but there are some super high ups. He's a senior sign for a reason. There are some super high upside guys at the top of that draft class. We just talked about reasons why Ethan Anderson's bat may not be progressing as well as we thought. When the first 2 weeks of the year, like, that bat looked tremendous. But clear reasons to be optimistic there about Ethan Anderson. If just one or two of these guys early rounds can start to hit, you feel a lot better. Or Chase also find the strike zone, you feel a lot better. But to have the guys you didn't expect to break out have this big breakout so early, that honestly gives me even more confidence. But yeah, it's only been 2 months, and we haven't seen Carson Dorsey, Brandon Downer, Isaiah Salinas, and Christian Rodriguez. That's 4 pitchers from this draft class we haven't seen yet because they've been hurt all year. And who knows if we're going to see them this year, any of them this year. But 4 more guys that we haven't even seen to help judge this class early on. And I give it a positive vibes grade so far.
Yeah, when you step back and you look at the whole draft class holistically, I think that so far it has been a success, primarily because of what we're seeing in rounds 11 through 20. The fact that Nate George is getting to Delmarva already is a huge success. I thought that George was going to put up good numbers in the FCL, but if you had told me a month ago or a month and a half ago that by the second week of June, Nate George is going to be in Delmarva, I would have thought, well, all right, either he got off to a really hot start or everybody's hurt and they just need an outfielder. Well, it turns out that this is a completely performance-based promotion that is absolutely earned. And I think even if you look at some guys that have not gotten off to the really loud starts in the FCL, there's some positive signs like DJ Layton, after a little bit of a slow start, has been performing better lately. Andrew Tess, to see an 18-year-old catcher
God.
who is walking as much as he is with an on-base percentage approaching 450, that's pretty positive. It just is a matter of whether or not some of these guys towards the top of the class can start to put it together. We just laid out the case why we think O'Verne's going to get it together. I think Griff O'Farrell has started to put the pieces in place. So really, can Chase Alsop start to settle in on the mound and locate his pitches more consistently as the year goes on? Do we at least see more power from Vance Honeycutt? Or a dip in strikeouts? I would take one of those two things right now. With Ethan Anderson, if the defense is the priority and the Orioles feel like he's making progress there, I'm okay with the offense maybe not being exactly where we thought it was going to be. You want to see the numbers get better, but if they feel like he's making progress on defense, that is something of a win.
I think this class, knowing what we've seen in earlier Mike Elias draft classes, I know I said he must not be named. Somebody's gonna come out of the woodworks taking shots at us, but I think seeing previous draft classes and these guys rise up the ranks and seeing who has fallen and who's clearly not going to pan out in this organization, and then looking at this most recent draft class has got me thinking like I do think we need to do what Bob mentioned. We come together and do a mock draft with the Prospects Live thing, because even if it's not specific player takes in particular, I do think there could be a lot of fun conversations that now my brain is churning. I want to have right now, but it's 11 o'clock at night. We've been going for an hour and a half already. But hopefully someday soon we can do that and talk about broader like draft strategy and draft talk in that sense. And should this organization continue to fight after the Vance Honeycutts early on in drafts, and like, is their process working? What do we like? What we don't like? It's a lot of fun conversations we can have about the Orioles and how they're drafting specifically and what we've seen. Now that some of these classes, we've got better ideas, obviously, of who's panning out and who isn't, and the different types of profiles they've been going after.
Back to Nate George for a second. He completely jumped over Jordan Sanchez. All these promotions, and Jordan Sanchez, who's like got close to 1,000 OPS and just hit a grand slam in his last game and is a little bit older, as we've heard. He's like 6 months older. He's just like, what the hell? I'm still stuck in the FCL while Nate George, Joshua Lorenzo, and Luis Almeida are moving up. Yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy how big of a jump Nate George is making. But I really want to see Carson Dorsey get on the mound, because I think he might end up being the best pitcher that the Orioles drafted in this class.
Yeah, that was someone that I thought was a breakout candidate coming into the year. And just a very quick word here on the promotions. It's been really great to see Lorenzo and Almeida healthy and performing this year. I know we touched on that a little bit last week, but both of these guys are showing their upside this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Lorenzo 18 still as well? He's got.
He's young.
Yeah, if you got two 18-year-old kids now in Delmarva, and I'm excited to see how they work in. Like, does Nate George take over center field duties immediately? I doubt it. I'm probably sure they probably ease him in next week, but over the next month, I'm anxious to see how the playing time pans out. For me, honestly, the Nate George story is amazing. It's awesome. Almeida, of course, we want to see pan out because he got that big signing bonus and a unique prospect in the system. But I think Lorenzo's being undersold here. Like,
I agree.
16-year-old kid, the power potential, plays third base. We'll see what the defense does if he plays third base for Delmarva, which I'm assuming he will. Like, I think this is like shiny objects over here, but Lorenzo is going to just bowl right through and become like a real dude. At least that's what I'm hoping and praying for.
I get like Kobe Mayo Redux vibes from Josh Lorenzo. He's got some real thump, real loud tools with the bat. So I'm excited to watch him.
Yeah, we'll certainly be looking forward to seeing how these players perform at Delmarva this week. And we will, of course, be back next week to cover all the latest news in Birdland. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member today at the $3, $5, or $10 levels. You will have bonus access to weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list and much more. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.